guys, I'm Michelle. We're here at Copenhagen Fashion Week, and we're going to be talking about the role of talent within the fashion industry. With me, I have Anna and Amelia. And why don't you guys give a quick introduction of yourselves?
Yeah, hi. My name is Amalie, and I'm the designer and founder behind the knitwear brand Hove.
Yes, and I'm Anna. I'm executive working at and with fashion and luxury brands. I'm also author of The Business of Aspiration and run a weekly newsletter, Sociology of Business.
Awesome. So let's kind of get it started talking about talent and young talent within the industry. How do we really, how do we define talent?
Wow, that's such a big question. I think for me, defining talent, obviously in a context like this, it's very much about having a new brand, serving something new to the industry in a way. I think for me, it's really about showing that there's another way of doing stuff, because obviously the great thing about being a talent is that you can kind of do things in a new way, and that's also something, when you are a new brand, you can really ask questions about, these traditions we, sometimes have in an industry. And I think I'm not sure about the exact definition of it, but for me at least, it's really about being quite free in the way I can work, and I can really try to define, my own way of doing a brand today.
Yeah.
But I guess you.
Yeah, I love what you said, because that was like, I was thinking the same thing, how definition of talent really changed in recent years. And when you think about it, like in a fashion ecosystem, what kind of people you need really, and especially in the past year when you look at digital fashion, so that is all of a sudden something that you need someone who has skills to know how to mint tokens, to know like the fabric and how to design digital clothes. That's something that didn't exist like last year, 2 years ago. And even before that, when you look also how organizations are structured, how you go in as a talent in a company and you stay there for the next 30 years, and how that doesn't work anymore at all, because in a creator economy, you almost have more competition from the talent outside than from other brands. In a way. And so that's the big question that fashion is going to grapple with, is how to tap into the best talent that's outside the organization, and how to create the bridge between internal talent and external talent. Because again, you're not competing with other brands, you're competing with all other talented individuals that are out there.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. Kind of thinking about how talent works with other talent, like what that relationship is like, and how to really like interact with each other and kind of support each other. How do you guys feel like is the best way to support talent, and especially younger talent, and kind of nurture and foster that? Just because I think in the fashion industry, a lot of times it can be a lot about marketing and how you network and that kind of stuff. But how do you really let talent shine and like support that?
I feel like sometimes in the industry there is a few things where you'll be able to say, okay, these might be the things that a lot of talent would need. I mean, more like basic things. It could be, advice for, how to build a brand and the economic part of it. And I mean, there could be a few pointers which is more general. But I think for me, being in this industry for a short time, when I meet someone who have built their own business and someone who kind of been in, the game for a longer time, I think there's so much great value in just conversation, because I think sometimes you can kind of tell yourself, what you're really good at and what maybe you're a little bit less good at. But I think in conversation with people that have a lot of experience, you can really realize, okay, these might be some things I could improve or do better. So I think the fault is if people kind of try to make guidelines for what helps talents. I think it's really about seeing people where they're at, because today we also see brands starting from such a different point than earlier on. And also brands starting with, a lot more knowledge about craft and wanting to kind of change the way of producing. And I think all these things is really something that needs another perspective. So I think, I mean, I could imagine that you have some sort of like advice or something you would give to talents, but I think it's really about meeting them where they're at. And I think I've been really lucky to meet a lot of people that, you know, really wanted to listen in a way.
Yeah.
That's definitely true. And what I'm seeing recently that is really needed and not always enforced is to fit the role to the talent, not the talent to the role. Because you know how they're like job descriptions and it's like, oh, certain amount of experience, and it's just all bets are off, to be honest. And they have to be, because that freedom that people, younger people, and like new workforce, and even, I mean, mid-career require is something that organizations are maybe not necessarily structured for. So for me, I think it's that freedom that you're talking about, and it's almost going like seeing the future in the past, like how craftsman workshops operated. So someone, you know, like everyone works together in order to create something, and everyone chimes in, and it's not like, oh, you do, you know, like, yeah, you do specific thing, but you also know who else is doing what, and your job is to make other people's job easier and better. And so you just don't focus on your single thing and how to excel. And that is what is the industry-wide challenge, is like how your success is measured. It's not, you know, and then how the reporting structure really exists, that you don't even think about how your output impacts someone who is like 3 departments away.
And I think it's actually really interesting what you said about, you know, these job roles, because I think the greatest value is really seeing that the people getting educated today and building their own brands are at a different place than some years ago. And I think also realizing that there's not one way of doing a business, and there's not one way of building a collection. And I think all of these things is really something that we should see as a gift, instead of trying to force it into old habits of doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Being more open-minded about how someone approaches like a problem or like wants to build a brand, I think is a really big plus that's come out of the past couple of years.
Definitely.
What do you guys think about kind of the biggest challenges for supporting talent and also coming up as talent?
I mean, I guess sometimes it can, in a way, you know, in the time we're at now, in a way it's easier than ever to kind of be discovered around the world. So I think some things are, you know, so much easier than just a couple of years ago. I think what people are struggling with now is to keep in relevance, but also to keep, I think sometimes the information, I mean, we can share something on Instagram that a lot of people see and react towards, but I gotten really aware that the way we communicate and the things that are really important to us sometimes gets a little bit more tricky to control, because in a way it's just moving very fast.
Yeah.
So I think this sense of realizing, okay, there's a communication that's much easier now, but still being able to really make it relevant. And I think that can, in a way, you know, sometimes you have people from across the world that kind of knows your brand, but also making sure that you have a really strong communication of what's important. I mean, it's such a new brand still, but that's really something that I've gotten aware about, that I really want to be more clear in that factor, because I think in a way it's a really good time to be a new brand and a new talent.
I think that's the problem, because everyone, I think you're absolutely right, because in creator economy, everyone is like being a new brand, you know?
Yeah.
It's always the question how, like, why would you work for someone else when you can work for yourself? And that's like a lot of people are asking that question, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that is the biggest challenge for legacy brands, for established brands, to
Yeah.
have really top talent like yourself who are having their own.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, today if people can actually allow themselves to work with what they're really interested in and really invested in, and feel like they can do something differently, I think, I mean, I wouldn't work for anybody else than myself. I really enjoy setting the frames for this, and I think being being lucky enough to be able to do it, I think that's really, I mean, it's really something that I'm really happy about, but also inviting people into my team, supporting these things we do, but also really coming with their own talent is, I mean, this part of building the business has really surprised me. You know, I enjoy it quite a lot.
Yeah.
You know, building this team and that around the brand.
Yeah. I think the other thing is that we used to think of of a linear career path, and it's like really understanding that the career path is non-linear, that you can go and spend some time somewhere and then do your own thing for a while and then rejoin and then again do your own thing and then like go back and forth and just follow that flow of curiosity and creativity and having that flexibility, because like before it was like you start and then you end and you get to gold water, whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's kind of the, or I even know, because there are three parts of the system. One is internal talent, then is recruiters and talent acquisition part, and then external. And then when they're looking at resumes, you need to spend X amount of years or they wouldn't even look at you. And I think that's such a disadvantage of that old school thinking, because you sort of, a lot of younger generations of workforce, they just opt out of that. You know, why would they spend a minimum amount of years somewhere where they can be doing whatever they want to do, and then when they're ready, they will want to be great candidates, but they're maybe not considered because of that old school thinking.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think a change in the way that people hire and see people, that would really help a lot, because I think in my position right now, of course, I hire a lot of people that don't have a lot of experience, because it's also a financial thing. But what I'm really, being offered by these people is that they have so much passion and they really want to build their own position around them, and they have so much they kind of want to change or do differently. And I think in a way it's a really lucky coincidence, because it's really what gives there's such a great atmosphere in the company, because everybody kind of want to really make their own position, and really also we're quite eager to do things differently. And I think that part really, I mean, it brings so much energy to a company that why wouldn't you do that?
Yeah, I feel like if every company were like that, where the previous generation influenced the younger generation of talent and just kept moving it forward like that and nurtured like the younger generation, it would be such a better environment to work in. And like I think that there would be so much less lost talent, like what you were saying, Anna, about like kind of having so many people kind of just get lost in like the corporate larger brands and like those systems. Yeah, for sure. And then what do you think about kind of how to nurture the younger generation? Like what do you kind of want to see out of them?
Do you want to start with
I mean, I can. I think you said it best. It's just that passion and that just the drive and motivation, because you can teach a lot of skills, but what you can't teach is motivation and talent. And like, yes, you can cultivate talent, but if there is not that raw materials to work with, which is passion, which is motivation, which is that some talent that is not being talented at I guess, okay, I'm going to leave that one out. It's just being talented in kind of bringing fresh eyes and asking why and asking why not, and sort of being the best in what you do, and everything else you can evolve and develop and acquire. But if there is not that drive and that spirit, it's just hard. That's most important for me.
I definitely think drive, spirit, passion, all these things is really, I mean, that's why when you hire someone, you're really hiring the person, and then skills can I feel like if there's a great connection, then we can kind of figure out the rest. But I think my hope for people maybe in school or just finish school is also really about just being brave, because I think sometimes, and this is not talking for all schools, but sometimes we do tend to be schooled in that we need to be able to do certain things because this is the fashion industry, and we need to be able to have a lot of different strengths so we can handle a lot of different tasks. And I think this is maybe also about, when you do a job description and you have all these things. And for me, it's really about being brave enough to specialize, to just say, this is really what I'm interested in, and this is really what I want to pursue. Because I think if people kind of are brave enough to say, this is really what I'm interested in, I think that's really how we can nurture talent, because people will become better at it, and we will have a better product and a better design process. And I think I'm really happy that I early on just decided that knit was my all-time favorite, but I think a lot of people were kind of in doubt and kind of encouraged to just stay more open to what they should focus on.
Yeah.
So I think just being brave enough to
I
say.
think again we're going back to that craftsman and workshop, because you really don't know what you are good at. Maybe you find out later in your career, oh my god, I really enjoy this. I really thought that was my thing, but actually it's something else. And I think people should be given the freedom to discover that.
Definitely.
By the mandate of their roles, whereas what usually happens, you go narrower and narrower.
Yeah, and I guess that's actually a little bit, yeah, but I guess I also kind of like, people can start out by doing something and, through that process discover something else.
Oh, absolutely.
I just think sometimes we're talking so much about how, our time in school is really precious because it's this time where we can create products without thinking about profit and earning money. So sometimes if the education would also kind of, help students realize that this is a time to test and not really be that stressed out. Because I can also see, what you're saying in specializing and opening up. I just think as a young talent, if you have something that you really dare to go all in on, then you would have a better chance of creating a more unique product in a way. But this is also very specific to textile in a way.
Well, I think it's for fashion and luxury. So, if you think about jewelry, if you think about watches, it's also the same sort of creativity that is open-ended, that is going to push you forward. Because at the end of the day, if you are someone who copies trends, that's a completely different skill than someone who is setting trends.
Definitely. Yeah, sorry, this was very me and my own. But yeah, of course, I think, yeah.
Yeah. Do you think it's kind of less about, people specializing in something, or do you think it is more about people specializing in something then? And how do you know? Is it just a feeling? How do you know when it's time to be like, okay, this is my thing? Because I think right now I feel like the fashion ecosystem, it really encourages people to be do everything. You can be a creative director and you can be a designer and all of this stuff. That kind of seems like that's the direction that, all of these brands are going, where they want everyone to fill every role and do all of these different things. And so are you guys kind of saying there should be more specialization because it helps people be more focused and good at what they're actually good at?
I don't think so. I think yes, maybe at the beginning, but again, if you're part of the craftsman guild, you do one thing and then you have a new teacher or master, and then you learn from them, and then you go to another village and you have another one, and you go. So that's the same thing. You have to go through training with different teachers, and then you have a robust skill set. So I think it's the robustness of the skill set that makes you competitive throughout your career. Whereas when you do one thing and you stay at one place, and then 30 years later you're still doing that thing and the world has moved on, even forget 30 years, 2 years, 5 years. But if you have that broad, diverse skill set, then you speak multiple languages, so you can direct all of them. And you also have that robustness and flexibility.
And I think, and I think, when I hear that, of course, for me it's been so important that, that within my field, I really have a lot of knowledge about, the production and the craft. And so I think in that context, I think it's super important to be really open for a lot of different tasks and a lot of different experiences, because I think sometimes you really do need to really test yourself in different environments to kind of find that spot where you feel like, okay, I can really benefit with something different here. I think for me, when I mentioned specializing, I think it's more about, if we talk very much about craft in specific, and we talk about education, and we talk about talents coming out of school, then I think it's kind of important that we support them in being brave in saying, this is really what I'm good at. And I think there's a huge value in discovering within this field. And then it's not about standing still within that field. It's still really about, I think for me, it's about, even though I have a brand where we knit, I want each season to be better. I want even the same style we produce to be produced better, to look better, to fit better, to never really be satisfied with what we have.
Yeah.
And I think if you don't find that within yourself, then you need to find a team that can constantly question what you do, because then in a way it will be easily, for the talent in that sense to kind of just stand still, even though you came out with all these, just this curiousness about the industry.
Yeah. And I think that seems like a natural path of like when you're really passionate about something, then you constantly want to innovate it and keep building on it and growing it and changing it too. Piggybacking off of that, what do you think that like, whose responsibility is it, do you think it is to like nurture younger talent and kind of guide them and inspire them to really like go forward and like do what they want to be doing?
Well, let's start with the young talent. It's their own responsibility. But then, of course, when you see you have education, so are there enough grants? Is there enough money for young talent to they can sort of do an experiment and not feel the force to join workforce, but maybe try something for themselves. So that's one part. And then obviously there are funds on the companies themselves, like through internships paid. For the longest time in fashion, internships were not paid, which is crazy,
Yeah, none
so
of my
kind of like
internships
create
were.
like accelerated programs like that, and then there are platforms like Instagram and TikTok that also provide. So I think it's the entire ecosystem that needs to be more supportive. And I also believe in like longer term, when you think about even what Web3 is offering in terms of DAOs and, distributed autonomous organizations and co-ops, how to connect different groups. Like you have designer network, which is a DAO of designers who are sharing resources and educating themselves and each other in creating 3D fashion. So imagine applying that in a physical world.
Yeah.
Where the proceeds are shared and all of that. So I do think that there is more and more opportunities there, because right now you have like CFDA awards. That's nearly not enough for the amount, for the amount of talent, and also for just in terms of the money and the mentorship you have for 6 months, and then off you go at the department store rack, When you even think like LVMH awards, like Marine said, like now she's everywhere, Like maybe that's not the growth she wanted. So
I think, of course, education is like a great starting point, because I definitely think that is really a great place where you can kind of build the confidence in people to kind of go out and believe in what they really want to do is important and make some change. But I also think it is quite easy for young brands or young people to be like, this is somebody else's responsibility. I think you really have to find it within yourself to be really like eager about, this is really what I want to do. And I think especially here in Denmark, we do have a lot of great systems really supporting young people, but it's of course about finding them, but also being in a place where you feel like you can access, if it's mentorships or all these things. But I think a school, in school would really be a great place to start, but also I really think it's about being really curious about how to do things, because I think a lot of the people that are doing really great is also because they have a personality that's really, just a go-getter, and they're really they want to make it, a success no matter what. And I think, of course, something like Copenhagen Fashion Week and all these institutions also here to. I think it's really important that they are setting out rules for example, sustainability and all these things, because I think sometimes we can't really wait for the industry to act on these things. We really just need to be able to say, this is what we want to accept and this is the rules that are set, because I think for a lot of brands it can be difficult to change old habits, and that's also sometimes why when you are a new brand, you should really just aim to do some of these things from the beginning.
Yeah, and build the foundation.
Yeah, so I think that's why it's nice that for some things there are some pretty strict frames to fill. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a great point to end on. Thank you guys so much. This was such a good conversation, and
Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Thank you for great questions.
Yeah.
thanks. Have a great rest of the week.
Same to you.
Thanks.
Enjoy.